Hi grade 11s, welcome to your first extended essay workshop of the year. Over the coming few months you'll have a few of these, including a couple on your next TOK IA day, as well as some that will just be shared with you digitally via Teamy, and some optional workshops you'll also be able to get involved in. Hopefully before the end of your EE cycle in October, we'll be able to have some face-to-face stuff, but for now we're stuck here on the screen. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. Today I'm going to start with just a little bit of info stuff, so we're going to talk a bit more about what the EE involves, what is the role of the supervisor, and what are the skills that I'm hoping you'll pick up over the course of the next year. We're then going to move into looking at the process of the EE itself, and you're going to be doing some activities to help you with stage 1 of the process, which is helping you identify a question. Okay, so that's going to be really the goal of today, to help you come away with, if not an actual question, the beginnings of one. Okay, so something that you can work from over the next week to help you really pull together a couple of questions for your proposal, which is due next Friday. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch or ask your TOK teachers. They're all very familiar with the EE process, or your subject teachers, okay, because I really recommend that you get as much information as possible before filling in those proposals. Let's get started. So, what is the EE? I mentioned to you in your assembly last week that it's a 4,000 word research essay, and I know for a lot of you that's quite a daunting thing. It's quite open-ended, it can be on pretty much anything. There is no specific structure that it has to follow, although within certain subjects there are common norms about how that might look. But it's largely independent and whatever you want, and that can be scary. So a couple of things to think about. The first is that even though it's scary, you will have a series of support resources like this one today to help you through some of the challenging parts of this process. You'll also have a supervisor who's there to support you through the process, and I really encourage you to engage with that person. Your relationship with your supervisor can be a massive help. What that means is, don't just leave checking in with your supervisor until you have to hand in key pieces of work. Check in with them when you have questions. Actually make sure that you're progressing okay before key deadlines like the draft. But I'll come back to the supervisor. The key part, of course, is what subject you're going to do it in. And you can take any subject that you're currently doing at IB level, or you can do a world studies essay, which would mean taking 2 subjects that you complete and combining them. Now, either of those options is fine. The most important thing when picking your subject is that you are interested in it. Because this is an independent process, it's not going to happen in class, you're not going to get, daily reminders. It's really important that you have a lot of self-drive. And the easiest way to get self-drive is to enjoy what you're doing. So really think outside the box about topics you're interested in, things you like doing outside of the classroom, and think about ways you can bring that into your subject matter. Are you interested in F1? Can you combine that with physics? Do you love gaming? Could you combine that with English? I had a student do that one year, quite a good essay. Think beyond just the course material to what do you want to do outside of the classroom. So as we're doing that, the process itself will run until October. That's how long you'll have to produce this 4,000 words. And what you will produce in October is a final essay that will be no more than 4,000 words and 3 written reflections. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the reflections today. I have a separate workshop I'll run on that a little bit later. But I just want to highlight one important detail about them. Those reflections will be written after you have had a reflection conversation with your supervisor. That conversation is going to be really important because it's going to guide the content of your reflections, okay? So as you go through this process, you'll have your essay and you'll have your reflection process, and they will be combined to total your 34 points for the marks, okay? If you have questions, get in touch, but I'm not going to talk any more about that for right now. Let's just talk a little bit about the skills. Making me smaller. All right, so hopefully you've seen this before. These are the common core problem solving skills. And what that means is these are a range of skills that we've identified as being things that translate across your subject work, your IAs, your TOK, your extended essay. And so as you work through the essay, I'd like you to keep these in your mind as something to think about how you're developing, but also as a trigger to help you if you get stuck. So the critical thinking and analytical thinking are probably straightforward because they're the ones you see directly as academic output in your essay itself. The other three might seem a little less obvious, so I'm just going to take a minute to talk about them, just so you get some ideas about, how these might trigger behaviours as you're going through the EE. Let's start with communication. Communication, I suppose, plays two key roles in your essay. One role, of course, is that your essay is a form of written communication, and how clearly you present your ideas, your arguments, your conclusions is going to matter. So working on your written communication skills is going to be a direct outcome of your extended essay process. But the other communication side of it is how you communicate with the people around your EE process. How are you communicating with your supervisor? How are you communicating with any primary research subjects? And this communication is often not as in focus, but it's critically important. So I highly recommend that you establish some upfront norms. Firstly, how routinely are you going to communicate with your supervisor? What format is it going to take? Is it going to be via email? Are you going to meet once every 3 weeks? Are you going to keep notes on a Google Doc? Think about all the ways you communicate and then decide what forms that will take with the key people in your research process. Which leads me to collaboration. Let's talk about the people involved in your research process. So the EE is an independent individual essay, which means your essay is your own. But there are lots of other people who can be involved. There's obviously your supervisor, and it's key that you collaborate with them. But there's also your classmates. There will be other students who are doing research essays in the same subject, but there's also a whole cohort of students doing the extended essay. So I really encourage you to make use of your classmates, to work with them when you get stuck. Okay? You'd be amazed how many of these problems you will be able to solve just by talking to each other. All right? Lastly, creative thinking. And I've left creative thinking till last because it's going to be a focus for today. We don't often think about creative thinking in our academics, and I'm sure it's not the first thing that came to mind when you thought about your extended essay. But creative thinking is going to do a couple of things for you. It's going to make sure you come up with a question you're interested in. It's also going to make sure you come up with something unique, something that's wholly you. And it's going to make sure that you really enhance those critical and analytical thinking skills because you're thinking outside the box. You're asking unusual questions in your research. And today, we want you to come up with some questions. We want you to come up with some subjects that you might be interested in. So let's look at how this might unfold in your EE process. Hopefully you are all familiar with this. This is the problem analysis map. And the idea behind this map is it should help you to identify an issue, problem, topic, in this case, question, and then work through the solving process of establishing your resources, collecting your data, and formulating it into a key piece of research and report. As you go through your EE, these are the stages we're going to go through, and I'm going to touch base with you through each of these 4 stages to help you complete them. Today, though, we're going to focus on stage 1, which is the problem or motivation stage. This is where we start thinking about what are the questions that are out there? What are the topics? What do we want to know? What are the challenges or issues that we want to investigate in our extended essay? So the focus today is on green. We'll be moving on to stage 2 after you've been allocated. But for right now, let's focus on green and let's get started with your first activity. So your first activity for the day is going to be identifying your EE topic. Now, we're going to do this by getting started with a really simple Mentimeter. In a minute, if you go to your Teamy page, you will have a link to a Menti that you will be able to access. What I want you to do is I just want you to brainstorm. Even if you think you've thought of a subject and a topic and a question, I want you to brainstorm as many ideas as you can for EE topics. Now, this should not be a question. I don't want full sentences. In fact, it's a word cloud, so it will, I think, only allow you 6 words. But I want you to come up with ideas for what people might be able to investigate further or might be able to turn into a question. So macroeconomics in Finland, or I don't know, I've just completely blanked in the middle of making this video, but you get the gist. You want to come up with broad ideas, okay? As many as you can think of. Once you've put in 3, it will let you put in more, and everybody's going to share them. Once you've had a look at them, okay, and everybody's added some ideas, what I want you to do is I want you to take the ideas that spark some interest in you, and they can be diverse, they can be different subjects, any ideas that spark interest, and I just want you to make a note of them on your ideas space on the worksheet that you've got in front of you today. So, activity 1, Mentimeter brain dump of every possible EE topic you can think of, and then pick the ones that spark interest and add them onto your ideas space. I'll be back shortly to see how you're going.